Okay, everyone. So I wanted to get into a little bit more detail about our pseudocode and the pseudocode syntax that we will be using for this class. So this text editing application that I use, by the way, is called Notepad++. I've got a link out there in the bibliography for you to download and install this this application. So the cool thing about this is that you can go up here and choose the language that you're using, and there are other really cool tools with this. So first and foremost, I always document my code, or try to always document my code. I make sure that we have as much information in the code as possible in terms of documentation and describing what's going on in the code. So, as I've mentioned before, every assignment or discussion submission that we will have a modular design. Now, this week we effectively only have one module. We have the main module. So every program that we write in pseudocode will start with main module right now, and then end with in program or in main or in module. So inside our main module, we declare several variables that will be needed to solve the problem that we have of calculating the area of 4 different rooms in our house. So we'll see that we have declare room 1 length as float, and we do the same thing with all these others. So let's take a quick review and see how that works. So we declare room 1 length as float, and that grabs a hunk of memory and defines that piece of memory space as a float value. Now there's no value in there yet. There's probably some garble in there, but if you output that value, it's just going to be a lot of nothing. So and it grabs that hunk of memory and puts a label on it, and the label is room 1 length. So that is our variable name. And now, once again, as I mentioned before, our variable names will have meaning, and it will have meaning through the entirety of our program. And right now we have short programs, and it's not really that big of a deal. But later on, when we get into more lengthy programs, those variable meanings are going to make a big difference. So do not use single letter variables. Do not use A1, A2, A3. Make sure your variables have meaning. I cannot stress that enough. So later on in the code, let's take a look at that. Down here in this submodule, we display instruction to the user to enter the length of room 1, and then input room 1 length, which is the label to this memory location that we defined right here. So the input room 1 length, that input command will wait for the user to input some numeric value. And then once that value is entered, it will go into this memory location that was previously defined as a float with the label of room 1 length. So it does that for every variable that we define in our main module. And then notice what happens right here. So we are calling a submodule called input data module, and that comes down here to this location. And again, I've got some documentation or comments that indicate what each module is for, and we enter the input data module, and we display out to the user, as I mentioned, input the length of room 1, and at that point it will wait for the user to input a value. And then it does the same thing for the width of room 1 and all the other values. And then when this module ends, it goes back up to this location in the main module, and then goes to the next line, and it calls the next module. So this module is perform calculations module. So it goes down to this location, and it will set the variable, which was area room 1, which is defined right up here. It will set that as the value that is in the memory location labeled room 1 length by the value contained in the memory location labeled room 1 width. And it will put that product into this memory location titled area room 1, and that will be the area for that first room. And likewise, it'll do the same thing for the other areas of the rooms. And then it will take the total of those rooms, and the sum will go into the memory location titled total area, and then once that is complete, notice that it goes back to the main module and executes the next line. And the next line is to call output results. So it goes down to this location, and again, this is just documentation indicating what the module is doing, and it will write room 1 is, and now notice the syntax of this. So I've got a space here and here, because when that outputs to a line, if you don't have that space in there, it's gonna look really garbled when you display that out to the user. So make sure you have the spaces in there properly, and also make sure that when you write information out to the user that you have the text that you're going to display, and then a plus sign, and then the value, plus sign, and more text. But anyway, you need to have a plus sign between each value or each string that you're going to output to the user. So we output the areas of each room, and then we output the total area of the house is, and then it displays the value that's contained in the memory location labeled total area and then square feet. So I think that covers a lot of the stuff that we've been kind of hitting from 30,000 feet to this point. So now this is a very, very basic modular design, but I wanted to kind of get your brains start to get wrapped around this, so we can start moving into this later on in the coming weeks. Now we'll get into some more complex control structures later on. As a matter of fact, while I'm here, I touched on the for loop when in the video notes that I posted for week 3, but I wanted to touch base on this again. Let me put my in main here. Of course, we have a main module, and we must declare any variables that we use. We have to declare every variable that we use, regardless of where it is. So we declare a variable called count as an integer. Of course, we're just using a counting variable. It doesn't have to be anything more than a whole number. So when we get to this for loop, again, notice what it does. It sets the value of count to 0, and then it tests whether the value of count is less than 10. And then now this count plus plus doesn't happen until after the guts of the of that for loop is executed. So it will test for the condition, and then it will execute everything inside that for loop. And again, it could be 1 or 100 lines. And then at that point, at the end of that for loop, it's going to do the increment and then go back up here and test whether it's still less than 10. Now, once again, that the first portion of this for loop will only happen one time during that for loop, and we'll see some variations in that a little later on. But it's very critical that you understand how that for loop works, and you'll be using that a lot. So that's all I have. Oh, one more thing, real quick. I wanted to show you the flowchart for that assignment. And again, this flowchart is used with Raptor. Again, this is not the best formatting utility out there, but this is it's free, and it works pretty well for most of the assignments that we have. So let's look at our code again, and we are declaring all of these variables, and so now this flowchart actually doesn't have the variables being declared, but that should be in a block like that. So you declare all the variables in the first process block, and then we go to the input data module, and we put those values input by the user into the variables, and then at this point you'll notice that it goes from the input data module to the calculations area, and it places the area of each room into the appropriate variable, and the total area of the entire house, or all 4 rooms collectively. And then at the very end, if you look at the code one more time, it goes to the output data module, or the output results module rather, and displays the information that we collected. And it's the same thing here. These are the output blocks for this program. Now, the reason I want to show you this is that in our code we have 4 different submodules or modules in our code, but look at the number of boxes that we have in our flowchart. So the blocks in the flowchart are not going to match the modules in your code. The flowchart is to show the flow of processes in your code, and that flow of processes certainly is not going to match the modules that are in your code. So take a look at that, and again, now this Raptor is a pretty cool utility. It's free and it's pretty easy to use. Doesn't work for everything, but go ahead and download that and install it and get familiar with it. And let me know if you have any questions about any of that.